Ooh, get him. Ooh, get him. Yeah, boy. H.P. Lovecraft. Dudes down with Lovecraft are dime a dozen. But there's a reason, right? Insanity is alluring. Attractive, apparently. But the fear of the unknown realized as horror, literally beyond human comprehension, is such an interesting idea, you'll be kicking yourself wondering why you didn't come up with it first. The Cthulhu mythos just pops, and I can't explain it, and apparently lots of people like it. They made an RPG, like in the vein of Dungeons & Dragons, for the concept, too. So 1920s war veteran turned private investigator uncovers secret cult, goes crazy. But how are the video games? Games? If you remember this game, you have officially qualified for the Aged Chums KBash subscription package. Like, Jesus, dude, you remember the original Xbox and you're still watching stupid video game videos? Oof. This game's really interesting. Everyone I know who's played it really likes it, so I'll say at the very least, it's really horrific. It's the kind of game that leaves an impression, a coming-of-age game for teenagers for sure. I mean, for God's sake, the game opens on a suicide. Real fucking fun off the bat, huh? You play as Jack Walters, a troubled private investigator who goes through far too much to summarize in a YouTube video. Needless to say, he has an encounter with the supernatural, goes a bit mental, then gets a job investigating the disappearance of a kid from Innsmouth. The game follows an alternate, extended version of the Lovecraft novella The Shadow over Innsmouth, going so far as to include familiar character names and locations while simultaneously going completely off the rails. So this town Innsmouth, like, I've played a few horror games and this is just creepy, especially for a game as old as it is. The colors are drab and everything's dark and lifeless, a lot like The Village in Resident Evil 4. The NPCs are hideous, exceedingly creepy. The wind howls, people whisper, it's haunting. And then you see this. I don't like this place, dude. I don't like it. And now it feels like we're having a bad trip. See, while you sneak around Innsmouth looking for the next plot point, key item, etc., you're gonna see a lot of unfortunate stuff. Jack doesn't cope with it too well. This insanity mechanic isn't represented by a meter or anything, just a wave warp effect that's incredibly difficult to look at. 90% of the time it happened, I had to stop, crouch in a corner, and look up. It's horrible. Not only that, but apparently Jack, when he's seen too much, will quite literally kill himself with whatever weapon he's holding. Gameplay is pretty basic all around, by the way. You can sneak and crouch and interact with stuff, but you're not doing much more than that for the start of the game. And let me tell you, this game is a slog. I seriously had to get a walkthrough open just to finish it in a timely manner. It's so tough because, generally speaking, you're either sneaking successfully or you need to restart, because you're getting peppered with bullets. I swear the moment the game gave me a gun was the single greatest joy in the entire experience. These guys who've been chasing you, murdering you, oh, Shine, you fish motherfucker. You talk to a surprising number of pre-corpse people, but don't you worry, the inexorable tide of fate will draw them away one by one. The most interesting character is Jack anyway, with his funny comments. He's a man perpetually interested in the world around him.
The old printing press appears to have been sabotaged. General notices. They're all dated 1846. It's the coffin of Tom Pickett, who died in 1837.
I love it. Jack's story just goes from bad to worse, as one might expect. Jack goes through mental torture, surviving constant assaults, a burning church, the most obnoxious puzzles. I swear, I'm not stupid, they're stupid, to the inevitable encounters with the mythos creatures. The game only ramps up in difficulty too. Surviving Innsmouth rewards Jack with a return trip, courtesy of the FBI of all things. The point being to bust up the esoteric Order of Dagon, the local cult. There's something so wrong about a Cthulhu game turning into a weak Call of Duty wannabe partway through. After a casual adventure through a quaint local refinery.
Fuck, get him, okay, no, okay, I'm gonna jump, but, what do you, no, God!
Jack weeds out the local cults almost single-handedly. Sorry to the people who love this game, but Jesus Christ, this game does not hold your hand. This game has some of the most antiquated design moments that'll get you killed repeatedly and just put you in a shitty mood for trying to play it. The section where enemies spawn infinitely and you just have to avoid them, which happens twice, by the way, even though both times it's framed like a firefight. You know, some of the puzzles as well, mostly any fight because of how quite literally esoteric the way to win is at times. It toys with your expectations. What makes sense doesn't work and what isn't intuitive does. I don't recommend the game, but I implore you to see for yourself if you're so inclined. Jack eventually has to raid their hideout, and all the while you've been putting clues together. Some of the puzzles actually force you to read through documents. Oh my god, and now the picture's coming together. I'll grant that interacting with the lore is rewarding. Eventually, Jack falls through a floor and gets rescued by a ship. So you get to watch as the crew is, of course, mercilessly torn to shreds by a legion of— Jesus! Stop! The section ends with the big boy himself, Dagon, who you just killed. Did I just kill a lesser elder god? What the fuck? But wait, it gets better! Devil's Reef, a location mentioned throughout the game, is not very scary. Non-Euclidean Atlantis is here, and the United States submarines are packing heat. Everything is awful forever, including extremely fun weaponless stealth section, existential horror, actual real horror. Oh wow, a super advanced gun that kills everything in one hit! Who left that shit lying around? The flying scream worms are there. That's a pretty good approximation of an incomprehensible being from another dimension. It's a rotund eldritch being. It has several tits. Yeah, okay, Jack, I know. Fun fact about this boss, it's bugged, at least on the PC version, right? Like, it was already an eccentric boss where somehow you take control of fish people, hit switches and pop the bubbles surrounding Hydra, okay, whatever. But on the last one, it can just get stuck. I don't know what I was expecting. Oh, and hey, funny story, you have to download a fan patch to get the default run speed on your character. All those tight-ass chases, those sneak missions I died in, I wasted so much time. But it's okay, I learned about this after the ending segment where, hey, second funny story, the cave collapses on you if you don't run to the exit quickly enough, which you physically cannot do in the default PC port. I know, it's great. It's, you know, really in the vein of Lovecraft, right? You can't beat squids. Hey, the official Call It Cthulhu Game. Official, huh? Official? More like officially fucking canceled. I've got really mixed feelings for this game. Too long didn't watch? Rent if you're curious. On the other hand, the first hours were captivating. I was so hyped to play through this dude's story when I rolled up into dark water and got talking to people. You play as a war veteran and troubled private investigator named Edward Pierce. I feel like we've been here before. Edward's pretty cool. Instead of looking like some mafia mook, like, yeah, kill him, boss, yeah. He just looks like a miserable guy. Oh well, it's not all bad. At least we got apple juice. Never been a fan of text boxes controlling my fate, you know? So like I was saying, I've never been so immensely hooked and subsequently lost on something so quickly. This game reels you in with this Dishonored-like atmosphere, mysteries, characters, danger, and fear of the unknown. It blows its load on these amazing set pieces and genuine terror. Then it takes the fattest fucking nosedive I've ever seen in a modern video game. You know, it's good when it's making you feel like this is a new experience, something uniquely Lovecraftian, something to uncover, to dive into, to get invested in. It does this a couple of ways, making you talk to all the psychopaths, letting you speculate about who's a fucking fish, letting you rummage and read and dig and explore, letting you put skill points into a mostly pointless skill tree which won't stop you from completing the game, but rather change what potential endings you can get.
Whoa! Whoa, holy shit!
Unfortunately, it only uses missions that make heavy use of these skills, ergo, open problem-solving areas with heavy dialogue some of the time, and opts for garbage the other half. This fall from grace happens right after you uncover a cult after a tense mansion crawl. Your cop friend gets killed and whoops, suddenly he's alive again in the next scene. How, why, what? I get that playing with expectations, sanity, reality, whatever is Lovecraftian, but this seedling mystery is never addressed, never brought up, and if by chance it's lost in a dialogue option, you just get called crazy, I'm sure. Closure at a premium. The worst offender, though, is the mission structure. Like I said, they start you off with investigation missions, social puzzle solving, as it were, but suddenly we're doing stealth sections which the gameplay here isn't rewarding or fun, and coming off the social bit frankly feels depressingly average. Later on, we'll be forced into a pseudo-boss fight where the solution is to use the completely impotent stealth mechanic, which I literally abandoned for running to find this incredibly specific Lovecraft dagger in this collection of at least 10 and jam it into a painting. So this is literally trial and error. Now that's some real good gaming! There's this completely nonsensical lantern section where I can't adequately describe this location, but suffice it to say that this sucks giant donkey balls. So many missions are way too short. So many missions don't have enough conversation to sell the social aspect of the game. It feels really incomplete, like I'm playing a big DLC, not a game. And I'm critical because I was really into this, you know? I wanted it to be awesome. It's a shame because investigating is fun. You know about the talking part, right? But you can also recreate scenes in your head, and while it's not mechanically challenging and mostly feels like an elevated cutscene, it's fun to see how a situation in the past played out. It feels for once like you're an investigator, and isn't that the point of this whole thing? Not to mention, because of the skill system, there are times where you can solve a problem in multiple ways, and that's nice, you know? Though it almost always sells you the default proper solution as well, so I don't know. Sometimes the others feel like they're more trouble than they're worth. But that can't save it from mechanics. It's like they drag and dropped every major gameplay system directly from the most generic engine ever designed. Need to sneak, crouch, and you're invisible unless you're in front of them. Enemies trying to find you, if they think you're there, they'll never stop walking around slowly. Need to shoot a gun? Literally just hit the button. It's auto-aimed and based on your strength skill of all things. Jesus Christ. I can't help but feel like even though there's a place for stealth, it doesn't belong, or at least isn't any fun. Because it's not like I'm sneaking around with a 9-inch combat knife, right? Combat sucks in general because it shows up once. Like he had a gun this whole time? I would have iced like half the characters in this game given the chance. Oh, the sanity. This guy has panic attacks like the last game, 13 years later. And we still haven't figured out how to make temporary insanity bearable during gameplay. Pierce slowly goes insane over the course of the game, at least mine did, when I found out that the stat even existed at all. I have no idea what it does. Apparently it affects some conversation options. Okay, apparently drinking restores your sanity, but you get that ominous message from drinking at the start. What is this? The story in general is fucking bonkers, almost treading into Resident Evil levels of silly. The worst part is, from mission 3 to 5, so Mansion to Asylum, it becomes almost immediately apparent what's going on and the plot is basically ruined. Not everything, mind you, but things stop being creepy right about then, because nothing really scary can happen anymore, and when something is a little creepy, the game mechanically fails to reward the player with fear by, for example, becoming a trial and error or die kind of game, which just ain't fun. I won't spoil the whole thing, but to make it easy, Edward Pierce is controlled by fate, and there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it, unless you specifically choose these dialogue options in the correct places to achieve an ending where you break fate. I did not select the correct dialogue boxes. I know this because the ending scene presents you with a dialogue wheel to choose your ending out of what's been unlocked in your playthrough. I think I may have made a mistake! And it's only insulting because the game touts that you're supposed to choose how you play. By extension, you should be able to choose your fate, but the endings and how to get them are locked behind the most innocuous, downright strange choices. Do not drink alcohol, read all unholy books, tell Bradley the truth about what happened to Marie Colvin, choose an answer in Cthulhu language 9 times, accept Drake's help offer, save Drake during the final clash with the Shambler, embrace the Leviathan's knowledge, drink the medicine during chapter 13, do not eat the Leviathan's body, and do not pick up weapons during chapter 13, give Kat a first aid kit and then examine the body of the deceased Mitchell, kill Bradley in chapter 12. What the fuck? It's got so much aesthetic going for it, but completely misses the mark on gameplay, unless you're into putting up with the hassles. The game's short enough, 6 to 8 hours and 4 different endings to see for $80. That's a consumer no-no unless you're really into Lovecraft. Rent the game. Now for the latest in Lovecraft games, The Sinking City. Oh boy, here we go. Important context, in Canada, a new console game costs a little over $90, which is pretty daunting. I buy about 4 major releases a year because video gaming is so cost prohibitive. So let's be clear, this game is absolutely not worth the purchase unless you're really into Lovecraft or investigating occult occurrences. It'll net you a lot of hours played if you sink the time into side missions and exploration. The main story isn't exactly lengthy, but it'll probably take 3 to 4 sessions to burn through. It plays a lot like a Sherlock game because that's what the developer makes. It also plays like a bad shooter because I'm not exactly sure. It's one of the more frustrating systems of gameplay. The level of polish is excessively low and clashes with how beautiful the world is trying to be and sometimes is capable of. And now, with mild spoilers, not the ending of the game or any of that stuff, let's review this thing. God, after Dark Corners, I'm so scared of NPCs in this game. You see a guy and it's like, he's a fucking fish! Oh shit, he really is a fish. Oh my god. The trailer spoiled it, but the city is just packed with ugly, ugly people. Like, Oakmont here is a pilgrimage site for the legally vile. It's your typical Lovecraft fare. Once military tough turned PI ends up in Garbage Town and everyone's crazy. Go figure. You're gonna have to put those investigator skills to the test, but thankfully, unlike the filthy subhumans around you, you can actually solve local crimes with the power of cheating bullshit. Simply hit down on the D-pad to reconstruct exactly how a crime happened, who did it, and the full context. Detective work really is simple, but don't get too hyped on your own ass fumes because you're gonna be facing down a horde of hideous eldritch beings. In a Lovecraft game, really? Like killing 3 to 10 dudes per fight? Oh, you're not kidding. Holy fucking shit. Guys, the combat is so bad. Like, this game had me for a bit, you know? It's good when it's juicy, when you're digging into that mystery, but having to worry constantly about not having any bullets, not having any health, which is a big one for a while, and generally having to slaughter way too much with the lamest guns ever made, it just sucks. I get that the pistol sucks, sure, but here's the revolver. Here's the shotgun. Geez, wouldn't want to wake the guy in the next room. Can you crank that gunfire effect down a titch? And the investigation work. Again, it's good when you're in the thick of it, when you know what you're doing, but it feels like everything's a hindrance. The loading screens last way too long. I had Twitter open almost the full time I was playing. Most of the time, you'll miss that one single tiny piece of evidence and look around the place about 6 times until you realize your mistake. Kinda shocked that if the detective has the power to construct literally everything in his head, he can't get a hint about missing objects and where they'd likely be. Finally, you gotta piece together leads at these registries where you select 3 things and highlight evidence and try to find out more info. It's less fun than it looks, and I'm sure it looks riveting. I should mention the game isn't all rough edges though, so what does it succeed at? Firstly, the game is pretty, surprisingly so for a completely dilapidated town. Those sunlight effects really amp it up. The game is genuinely creepy at the start and for a good while afterward because you're not very powerful. Every encounter matters. It succeeds at generating fear in the player without jump scares, so that's a plus. I found myself genuinely interested in the lives of the characters in the game. Lastly, and I'm pretty sure this is a big spoiler, but I took great pleasure in clowning on the Grand Wizard here and swiftly dismantling the KKK. A+. Now, normally I'd chalk up my complaints to, well, it's not my kind of game, but that's not even accurate. I like the Phoenix Wright series fine, I'm into Lovecraft stories and games, and I like RPGs, but almost everything about this game feels half-done or half-baked. The RPG elements don't need to be here, they just don't. Over half of them are, by my count, functionally worthless in this game. Even the last game had better RPG mechanics. Not to get nitty-gritty, but some of these literally only give you a 10% chance for a damage boost on one of your gun types' shots. That's crazy bad, dude. What? The shooting sections are fine, but they feel like they don't belong. In the Cthulhu RPG, if you're fighting eldritch beings, you're either going insane or going in the dirt, and it feels like the game could have been handled differently. They could have at least made the guns fun and powerful. Like, this has to be the worst shotgun in any game I've ever played. And this is definitely the worst revolver. The sanity meter comes into play on occasion, but you can just dope up, ending the negative effects, and I took a rank in sanity early, stopping the danger that comes with dipping too low. In short, the horror mechanic was effectively worthless against my playthrough. But that's just game mechanics. How about being Lovecraftian conceptually? I'll admit that it was jarring to learn that the fish people in this game were more or less just people, not crazy cultists. I ended up helping one and realized he was just a guy. But this is the same game where a fish will tell you he's proud of his heritage and people are racist towards the fish people and you're supposed to forget what you know about Lovecraft, yeah, okay. But a dude can walk around the streets with literal human remains decomposing inside a basket and nobody bats an eye. The world makes almost 0 sense. I've seen a lot of writing about the complex morality of this game and I'll agree, that might be what it gets most right. I recently played the Fable franchise through and was reminded of how watered down morality can truly be in games. It was refreshing to see a world with actual decisions to make. However, not a single one of those came back to bite me in any meaningful way, even when I made the egregious mistake of condemning potentially hundreds of people to death early on, though I won't spoil the context. That's just poor RPG craftsmanship without question. I want to clarify that the game is fun and I normally wouldn't drag a game from a studio that isn't AAA, but goddamn, this video was slated to come out like 3 months ago, but the game got pushed back. How bad was the game before the push? Because the performance issues are genuinely shocking. Constant dips below 30 FPS, constant failure to load accurate lighting effects, and even rendering and draw distance problems among other things. I even found this hilariously unfinished section early on. I'd say I hope it gets fixed. But will it be fixed? It's just a hunch, but I swear all these Lovecraft games were made shoddy, and not because the technology and team doesn't exist to really kill it, but because people know Lovecraft is niche, cult status, as it were. The child market won't buy it, the teens probably don't care, so you're left with the most vicious consumers, the adults. We're gonna be more critical. It's a failing endeavor making these games, and maybe I'm wrong, I want to be wrong, but there's a pattern emerging here, and... Wait a minute. Call of Cthulhu, the official video game, published by Focus Home Interactive, started by Frogwares in 2014, changed to Cyanide in 2016. The Sinking City, published by Big Ben, developed by Frogwares. Focus Home publishes Sherlock games, developed by Frogwares. What is the link between Dark Corners and these games? No! No!